for the best in GAA on DVD.
Hi, I'm Katie Taylor. I'm an amateur boxer and I live in Bray, County Wicklow in Ireland.
This is amateur boxing in Ireland in the 21st century. Not that there's anything particularly amateur about it anymore. The leading fighters are among the highest paid sports people in the land. They're part of sophisticated scientific training programs for mind and body. They even get flown to Los Angeles for television commercials.
We ain't done yet, man. We ain't done yet, man.
Yeah, simple.
It's Ireland's most successful international sport by far, with the boxers winning more Olympic medals than every other sport put together. But underneath this high-tech golden veneer lies a remarkable sporting tale. That there is an Irish Amateur Boxing Association at all is some feat. That it celebrates its centenary replete with a national stadium and a thriving network of clubs from 32 counties representing communities from all sides of social and sectarian divides elevates the history of the IABA into something of a sporting epic.
Now, we are boxing, remember, not professional boxing. It's a different sport completely. I'm not very fond of professional boxing because I think it's too vicious, completely too vicious. Amateur boxing is not. It's the art of self-defense. If you read a book, that's what it tells you. The art of self-defense.
It's much truer and real than professional boxing in many ways. There's a humanity and a dignity and there's a courage involved in it that's just so pure.
The gentlemen of Victorian England believed that professional boxing was a sport for the depraved and stained by gambling. So they invented their own code. Amateur boxing was conceived as a gentleman's sport, a bit like fencing, in which winning depended on skill and craft, as opposed to the professional game that largely relied on the ability of one man to batter another senseless. And by taking away any possibility of getting paid to fight, it also placed the sport outside the reach of the working class.
Everybody talks about professionalism and the professionalisation of sport, but of course the truth of it is that people have always been paid for playing sport. There is nothing new about this concept. What is new is the idea of amateurism, and amateurism is something which came out of the ethos of Victorian England, and the idea that to love sport was enough. You didn't need to get paid for it because if you were a middle-class professional or someone from the upper classes, you wanted to maintain control of your sport and you did not want to share it with working-class people, so you tried to exclude them.
Amateur boxing thrived in the British Armed Forces and police forces, and also in the great public schools of England. And this is how amateur boxing came to Ireland, through the British Army, the Royal Irish Constabulary, and Trinity College. Amateur tournaments were staged principally in and around Dublin, and in 1911, at a meeting in Beggars Bush Barracks, the Irish Amateur Boxing Association was formed. The outbreak of World War I then the Easter Rising of 1916, and the War of Independence that followed effectively put an end to a sport which was dominated by the armed forces.
Sport was certainly not a major priority in those days. It was, settling into the new state and establishing the new administrative structures. Matters were very, very volatile at that time. I mean, the treaty wasn't followed by peace, it was followed by a civil war. So politics dominated the agenda.
When the fighting was finally over and the Free State was established, boxing became extremely popular in the new National Army. Even though the sport had been invented by English gentlemen and brought to Ireland by the despised British military, amateur boxing escaped the foreign games ban.
What they mean by foreign sports is English sports, but not all English sports, just English sports that are maybe identified with, say, the upper class, like cricket, or English sports that are identified with the British military, like, say, soccer. So it's very selective. But boxing isn't one of those, and I think it's because the values of boxing sort of transcend that kind of narrow sense of being associated with the upper British class or with the British military. And boxing is one of the things like swimming, for example, or athletics generally, which is just seen as international rather than just English in that pejorative sense.
Boxing's journey from the British garrisons into the heart of Irish sporting culture was completed when the sport was featured as part of the Tulchan Games in 1924. Reviving these games, essentially a Celtic Olympics, had been mooted by Michael Cusack and Maurice Davin when they founded the GAA.
When you look back on it, the Tulchan Games were quite an extraordinary spectacle. You think of it, it was 1924. The Civil War is barely a year finished. The Free State is barely 2 years in existence. And the Irish Free State in that year organised a festival which was larger than that year's Olympic Games.
The Tulchan Games were to be an exhibition of the best in Irish sports, a celebration of the new Free State. It was decided that the competitions would be open to all people of Irish birth and also all people whose parents or grandparents were Irish.
Boxing fitted quite nicely into that spectacle because, of course, it allowed the organisers of those games to include in the programme not just the very best Irish boxers, but it also enticed over various people who had taken part in the boxing at the Paris Olympics of 1924. Notably Purdy, for example, a New Zealander who won the welterweight title in the Tulchan Games. He actually beat an Irish representative, Sergeant Patrick Dwyer, who finished fourth in that year's Olympic Games. There was actually extraordinary footage of Purdy throwing shapes out in the air, showing you his moves, and the newspaper reports from that time talk of Purdy's extraordinary, extravagant style overpowering Dwyer, and how his sheer movement was too much for Dwyer.
In October 1926, boxing even became part of the reconciliation process with the old enemy. Less than 5 years after it had vacated the barracks, the British Army was back, ready to take on the Free State Army in gloved combat in Dublin. Boxing brought Irish and British soldiers into friendly conflict for the first time. One of the strongest advocates of boxing within the military was General Owen O'Duffy, who reapplied his enthusiasm to the Garda Síochána when he transferred from the army. O'Duffy had been a leader in the War of Independence and a protege of Michael Collins. He commanded the Irish police and defence forces before emerging as Ireland's leading fascist in the 1930s.
He is a very egotistical kind of character, and there is this sense that he kind of shapes the police force to reflect how he sees himself and how he sees the Irish Revolution. So it's very Gaelic, it's Catholic and it's Republican. So when these boxing teams went off to France or went up to Belfast and had great results, you would read then later in the Garda journal how their greatness reflected on the greatness of the Commissioner and how it was a testament to O'Duffy's brilliance. So, I mean, you can be a bit cynical about that, of course. But it is true that the Gardaí and the Gardaí boxing teams and so on reflected very well on what the Irish state was doing. So this is part of a really kind of exciting period of state building in the 1920s and 1930s, and it's very successful PR, not just for O'Duffy and the Guards, but for the government generally.
Ireland's new military and police forces helped the sport emerge from the garrison to become the working man's sport.
At that time, all the lightweight divisions for the army and all the heavy weights, say from light middle up along, were generally Garda. And at that time, the commissioner of the Garda had the idea of getting boxing clubs going in the different towns. So he would send out some of the people that were on maybe the international boxing squad, and that did develop boxing in the entire country to a degree.
O'Duffy saw local boxing clubs as a way of easing the Guards into communities where, as outsiders, they were often regarded with suspicion.
When O'Duffy was setting up the police force, the context was very important because it was in the middle of a civil war, and also the Garda Síochána was an unarmed force. So you're sending these young men into quite disturbed parts of the country where they were facing the threat of the armed IRA, and also they weren't known. Public support is really crucial. You know, they had to win acceptance. And when they came into these areas, they could make contact with the community through setting up sports clubs and GA teams and hurling teams and so on, building handball courts at the back of police stations. They were able to sort of make a contact with the local community.
The election of O'Duffy's deputy, Major General W.R.E. Murphy, to the presidency of the IABA in 1928 was a key moment in the organisation's history. Under his charge, provincial councils were established and the first national juvenile championships were staged, which resulted in thousands of boys flocking to boxing clubs around the country. Within a few years, there were more than 100 clubs affiliated to the IABA, with some 3,500 boxers donning the gloves.
I was born in the North City in Dublin, in a place called Denmark Street. All around that area there was a few publicans who were interested in helping kids who were in the areas to join boxing clubs, to get them off the streets, say. It really, like, it was an ideal outlet for the tenements. There were hard times in it, and you didn't get any money out of the boxing or anything else, but you got the protection from the evil deeds, could you say, of somebody else. You know, they were never your evil deeds; they were all the evil deeds of somebody else. By the time I was just 11-year-old, I had my first contest against Jimmy England, and I needn't tell you I lost. I just have a look at me. But most of the champions came out of the tenement areas. You'd have about 7 or 8 champions, like, in a small pocket, like, you know.
The IABA staged many international bouts during the 1920s. An Ireland team travelled abroad for the first time in 1926 to fight the Germans, who became regular visitors to Dublin in subsequent times. Indeed, the first German boxing team to fight under the banner of the Third Reich in 1933 arrived in Dublin just a few months after Hitler's appointment as Chancellor. Visiting teams rarely came away from Ireland with a victory, and by the early 1930s, the leading lights of the national team were among the most popular sportsmen of their day. One of the undoubted stars of the time was Frankie Kerr from Belfast.
He was the youngest man ever to win a senior title, in that he was only 16 when he won the title in 1932, and he actually won the trials to go to the Olympic Games in 1932, but somebody decided he was too young to go to the Olympic Games. He had a job in Belfast. He worked in Dunlop's. He made sports equipment. He was involved in making tennis rackets and footballs. He came to Dublin through Father McLaughlin, who was highly involved in Arbour Hill Boxing Club, and he got a job in Dublin, also in Dunlop's. His ability to fix tennis rackets was quite legendary. It was also a lucrative trade for him when times were difficult.
Frankie Kerr won his 6 national titles in the 30s, when times were certainly difficult. But those who controlled boxing in Ireland were nothing if not ambitious. But no other boxing association in the world owned its own stadium, and no other would have taken on the task of raising £13,000 without state help. The IABA built its own home, its own Croke Park.
Prior to that, they used to hold the national senior championships in the army barracks or the police headquarters in the Phoenix Park. So they decided that, look, we're not going to have this a nomadic existence going around all the different places. Let's build a stadium.
The National Stadium was built adjacent to Griffith Barracks. There was an old, disused building on the site known as the Gun Room, which was converted into a gym. The foundation stone was laid in the summer of 1938, and by the following spring, the National Stadium was finished.
This was the first and still the only purpose-built boxing stadium in the whole world. It was finished in 1939 to allow the European Boxing Championships, which after the Olympics were the #1 boxing show on earth, because at that time there were no World Championships. It was the Olympics and that was it. And the Europeans were going, but they were never in Ireland, and in 1939 they were held right in this space. Well, it's remarkable. And on those first European Championships there were wins for 2 Irishmen, so that made it especially good. Jimmy Ingle and Paddy Barnes got gold medals.
It seemed fitting that the first gold medal to be presented at the new stadium was to one of Dublin's own, 17-year-old Jimmy Ingle of Ringsend. And just a few hours after Ingle's win, Paddy Dowdle, another Dubliner, took the featherweight gold. Private Paddy Dowdle was an army man who was clearly well looked after by the butcher at Griffith Barracks, next door to the stadium.
He put a stake inside of his blinking thing here. And if he met Dowdle outside saying, having a pint or something, slip it to him. And it'd be the best of steak, it'd be sore lion and God knows what not. That had the control of the lot there.
And while the steak was being smuggled out of the barracks, similar means were used to get Paddy Kilty into the stadium on the opening night.
Someone said, would you like to go to the stadium with your dad, Paddy? Of course I said yeah. But then things went after that I didn't come into. I know that they flanked me in. I was smuggled in. That's the way I describe it. I was smuggled in. Paddy Dowdle got me in. Probably he was involved in the smuggling, but anyway. It was exciting, all right. Lights everywhere, you know. Boxers, they might as well have been foreign boxers for all I knew about them. But it was an enjoyable night.
DVDsales.ie for the best in Irish comedy on DVD.
Merry Christmas.
No one brings you movies like Sky Movies. Sky, believe in better.
Someone needs a number. Need a number nifty? Call 11850.
Spoil the one you love this Christmas with a Monart destination voucher. Monart has won world awards for excellence, including runner-up Best Spa Retreat in the World by Condé Nast Traveller, named as one of the top 10 destinations in the world by Forbes magazine. Irish Tatler have awarded Monart Ireland's best destination spa for the last 3 years. Monart offers so much: treatments, day spas, and the ultimate residential escape in Ireland. Monart, the ultimate gift this Christmas.
DID Electrical is open weeknights till 9 with incredible offers like this LG 20-inch LED TV at $179.99, this Samsung 10.1-inch Galaxy Tab at $479, and this Samsung Netbook at $299. Massive savings at DID Electrical, open weeknights till 9!
The Irish Film Institute presents GAA Football Gold, a must for all GAA fans. This unique DVD includes highlights of the All-Ireland football finals of 1947 to 1959, preserved and restored by the IFI Irish Film Archive. Watch rare footage of some of the greatest Gaelic football players ever, including 9 of the GAA's Gaelic football team of the millennium. Available from all leading DVD retailers and online at ifi.ie.
Gucci Guilty Intense, the new fragrances for him.
And for her.
DVDsales.ie for the best in GAA on DVD.
The Germans respect nothing. Latest evidence of this is their bombing of neutral area.
Just as the National Stadium opened its doors, the world went to war, and international competition ceased for the next 5 years.
Maybe this is the price ERA has to pay for sitting on the fence.
But when the guns fell silent and some semblance of normality returned to people's lives, amateur boxing in Ireland embarked on a period of unprecedented popularity. And in cities like Belfast and Dublin, it became the working man's sport.
Dublin was very alive with boxing clubs. There's a lot of clubs around Dublin area, you know, and the north side of the city as well, you know. There was always plenty of action in Dublin where the scrapping, you know, great.
There were a plethora of clubs in the centre of the city. They occupied the basements of tenement houses, Gardner Street, York Street. But then, with the rapid expansion of the satellite towns at that time, Crumlin was one of the first, and Crumlin had a population of about 40 to 50,000 people, and there were very, very limited entertainment. So therefore, boxing clubs started up all over Crumlin. I remember coming to the stadium here one time, and there was 8 weights on. There were 7 boxers from Crumlin. So that gives you an idea of how attractive that boxing was to people in Crumlin and Ballyfermot, Finglas, all these satellite towns, because they didn't have enough money. There was no work. So sons had to go out and box.
You have to remember too, the amateur boxing name, it wasn't, there was, if you got a club tournament, say with 2 big names fighting each other, you could nearly guarantee that there was money in it for them. I remember Jimmy Ingle, who was European flyweight champion in 1939. In his last amateur fight, he boxed one of his great rivals, Spike McCormick. And Ingle got £10, and he thought, God, I did well here. And later he realised that McCormick, who lost the fight, got 3 times that much. But this is amateur boxing. I think the authorities just turned a blind eye to it. We're happy to see the crowds come along.
People who boxed in the National Stadium, or anywhere else for that matter, got vouchers. You know, the vouchers could be for £2 to £3 at that time. So people would box probably every week in the stadium. They used to box every week. And they'd amass maybe 7 or 8 of these vouchers and then give them to their mother or father, who would then buy clothes, whatever. But that's what happened.
It was from the newly built streets of Crumlin that one of the real legends of Irish boxing emerged. Ollie Byrne started boxing as a schoolboy in the late 30s. And he was still donning the gloves in the 1970s after a ring career that lasted nearly 40 years.
Ollie Byrne was going out. He had about 5 or 6 brothers and sisters. And he just went out and he boxed every week to put bread on the table. That was it. It wasn't for the love of boxing. He just had to do that. Then he grew to love the boxing. There was no question about it.
He had his first fights in 1939 And his last fight, which I was at, was 1975. So that's 36 years in amateur boxing. I'm sure it must be a world record. I certainly haven't come across anybody who could equal it.
This is Ollie Byrne, one of the most remarkable men of Irish sport, boxing a man less than half his age. His boxing career is as old as the stadium itself. There's quite a question mark over his age. A lot of people here say he's well over the 50 mark.
He would still have been boxing, I think, only the IFPA eventually said, I think it's time to call it a day, Ollie. He's just coming up to his 50th birthday.
And on a majority vote, Ollie Byrne notches up yet another win on this remarkable career and certainly delights the crowd here.
Well, they didn't really stop him, but they brought in a rule that you couldn't box after you were 34, which is a very good rule, you know, very good rule. Ollie would have boxed forever, you know. But he was a great character, you know.
By the 1950s, the local boxing club had become a fixture throughout much of Irish society. Improvised gyms were set up in basements, pubs and church halls. And if there was little else to do, there was always the boxing.
Sixpence more or less got me into boxing. Now you might say, what's that about? I come from a place called Pierce Park in Drogheda. It was one of the biggest council estates, probably about 2,000 kids. And my father wanted to keep us off the street in case we went into trouble. And he gave us a shilling, myself and my brother, and he says, go over and join the band. And there was a band over in Georgia Street, still there. Well, it's not there, it's a new place to have now. So we went over, we were all queuing up to go in to play them, because some of my father's people were musicians. He wasn't a musician, but he thought maybe there was a musician in his family. And we went over there, we stood there at the door, big crowd. And someone said in the crowd, they're only taking him into the boxing club for sixpence. So we decided we'd go to the boxing, because we had sixpence to spend. We had a shilling each, so we went to the boxing. So that's how I got involved in boxing.
There was no other sport, really, as such. The schoolboy football at that time started at 14 years of age. We could start boxing at 9 or 10. And well, a lot of us played football as well. But the boxing was a great outlet, you know, and particularly with the Imperial Tobacco Company. I mean, the first time I ever went outside of Dublin was to box as a schoolboy in Belfast or in Ballyhaunis, or, you know, and it was a company, they were financing the club at the time, you know.
Men like heavyweight Jerry O'Collman, Terry Milligan of Belfast and Maxie McCulloch of Mullingar became the stars of the Irish boxing team, and they certainly knew how to pull a crowd.
At the National Stadium Dublin, the Irish team climbed through the ropes to meet a group of young lads from Germany for an international boxing match that promises to be a pretty exciting show.
I was aware of it growing up, of the stadium, because it was a place to come and a place to see the legends of Irish boxing, because, I mean, they boxed other places too, like particularly Belfast and Cork, but this was the place.
Here's the start of the bantamweight contest between Andy Reddy in dark vest and Germany's Amarain.
The stadium was packed for junior championships, intermediate championships and senior championships. I mean, people couldn't get in here because of the crowds. It was a tremendously popular sport among the working class people in Dublin specifically. This was their sport.
Friday night, the working class, you know, down to the stadium every Friday night, got the pay package on Friday, and it was a great arena for, you know, great rivalry there, you know, over the years. It's terrific.
I remember my young days coming here, the place would be packed to the rafters, you know. The volume of enthusiasm in the crowds, you know, when the top notchers would come into the ring was fantastic.
I remember coming down to the stadium and you couldn't get in. There was black market tickets outside. You know, I remember looking for an international ticket. I ran all the way into Elvery's and I got a ticket. And I was delighted. I got an international ticket. And that's how important it was at that time.
A star-studded team of American champions arrived in Dublin in 1952. It was a huge event.
Here the team was received by the American-born Prime Minister of ERA, Eamon de Valera. The National Stadium was certainly booked out, for there wasn't a vacant seat when the visitors climbed into the ring, preceded by the American flag.
Against all expectations, the Irish team won the match with the fight of the evening featuring a 19-year-old from Belfast.
They were the first team to travel after the war over to Ireland, you know, and we were the first, so you couldn't get into that place for loving the money, gold dust, no tickets, you know. I remember standing on the scales. Yeah, it's hard to believe it. I only was 8 stone 3, you know, 5'9", you know. And the American trainer says, "He'll do you, Jack Covino."
We'll finish this brief glimpse of an Irish triumph with a third Irish win. It's McNally of Ireland and Corvino beating the living daylights out of each other, or trying to do so, in the bantams.
Didn't look tough till he stepped it in. Jesus, shoulders and. No, Corvino was dynamite, you know, dynamite. Always said he was the hardest man I ever fought as an amateur. He was wild, he was just, he looked a lovely angelic face. Ah! That was all over. He could get his hands going to work, you know.
Ireland first competed in an Olympic boxing tournament in Paris in 1924. Despite a few close calls, the team had failed to take a medal of any colour until John McNally arrived in Helsinki in 1952.
From 1948, that was when I first came across the Olympics. That just fired my imagination. I said to my father, I'm definitely going to go to the Olympics. He says, "Well, son, you're going to have to fight hard." I says, "I know, you know, and I've trained hard."
Turning to boxing, it's the final bout for the bantamweight title. Pentti Hämäläinen of Finland trading punches with John McNally of Ireland.
McNally got all the way to the final, where he came up against the Finn Pentti Hämäläinen. A clash of heads in the second round cut McNally's eye. Yet at the end of 3 rounds of boxing, a first Irish gold seemed assured.
When you got into the ring, it was going to be tough because there's 15,000 people there and we're all finished. you know, there wasn't nobody for me there, you know, except my own mob. I thought it was home and dry as for a gold, you know, it did honestly after the way I was fighting, you know. It took a long time for me to come to a decision of the fight. I don't know what the hell they were doing, but they were arguing and all this lark, you know. But eventually gave it to Pentti Hämäläinen, that's his name, you know. Fair enough, nothing I can do about that. People says, "What do you think? You think you won?" I said, "It doesn't matter what I think, I would not change the decision." You know, if I had spoke up, I might have changed the decision. I don't think so, you know. So you got to take the cards as they come.
John would never admit to you that he was robbed in the final, but I think most commentators will say that it was a hometown decision. The last thing you want to do is fight someone from Helsinki, in Helsinki, on the last day of the Olympics when Finland did not win a gold medal. John got the silver, but John came home to Belfast and Ireland as a superstar.
Belfast was blacked out. The streets were packed, all the main streets, and trying to get me up and down. And I was pissing down, sorry my expression, but I was lashing, I was soaked again, you know. The Lord Mayor made some sort of an excuse and he couldn't appear, so the Chief Sheriff was there. And I came out and with my Irish blazer, an Irish blazer, tricolour. He wouldn't go on the stage with me, and I took it off. That's when I realised what sort of bastards these are, and like, I mean that, you know. He wouldn't go on the stage until I took a blazer off. And I was so naive, and we Sammy loved to keep the peace, and I'll just do it without the blazer, John. Had it been now, I'd come to shove it, you know.
With an Olympic medal in his pocket, John McNally was lured into the professional ring. But Belfast had plenty of fighters ready to take his place.
Belfast became a very mean city, a very hard city where, you know, a reputation for fighting, well, being Belfast, of course, but the individuals within it, you know, would have taken to boxing naturally. So that Belfast and boxing, it goes together hand in hand, actually probably since the town became industrialised.
They were all working class areas, and the clubs were all thriving. I remember that we had a couple of clubs. We had the Windsor and the Crown Club down in Crown Entry. One was downstairs, and the floor above them was the Windsor. So they were really bustling then. With kids boxing, you were boxing then. You would box maybe twice in the one night, maybe 3 times, but usually twice. There was that many in the entry.
From the fighting streets of Belfast came one of the great rivalries in Irish sports. John Caldwell and Freddie Gilroy were about the same age and about the same weight.
Thank you.
And they were destined to be forever linked together in Belfast boxing folklore.
I don't thought you were going to cost a fortune.
They're legends. You know, these guys are probably better known for their amateur careers than their professional careers, and people, you know, talk about them almost as if they're mythical figures.
Well, I was just ahead of John as a schoolboy, juvenile, youth, junior, senior. We had been friends, we had been teammates. We were in the same Irish team that went all over the world together. You know, we went to America, Canada, Australia. We went to Germany together. We went to, you name it, we've been there.
John Caldwell and Freddie Gilroy were both selected to box for Ireland at the 1956 Olympics in Melbourne. And they were joined on the team with 2 fighters who formed Dublin's great boxing rivalry of that era.
Perry and Teat. Teat and Perry. Perry and Teat were like Morecambe and Wise or Abbott and Costello. They were a pair, Kelly and Roach. Who was better? Who knows who was better? But they had a complete contrast in styles.
F. Tite takes on Hans Muller in light vest in the featherweight class.
Like Fred Teat, if you could imagine, was classy in the old classic style, you know, the jab, the cross. Fred was wonderful feet. Fred Teat could have been a world champion skipper. So if you're a good skipper, it means you're good on your feet. He was fabulous on his feet, fabulous with his fist, and lovely and clean cut in every sense. Harry was a fighter, but also the fighting kind of disguised his boxing ability, which was brilliant as well. The clashing styles made it. Harry wouldn't give you a rest for a second. Harry was over you like a rash all the time. But just not, he didn't swing at you, he boxed at you. And the contrast made it. And the fact that they were friends, I think that made it. But they beat the daylight out of each other in the ring.
Gilroy, Caldwell, Teat and Perry were all selected for the Olympic Games in Melbourne in 1956, along with Tony Byrne of Drogheda. But these were the 1950s, and if you didn't work, you didn't get paid. So a fundraising campaign under the banner of Send Byrne to Melbourne was set up.
In my days, the areas which were the strongest areas was Belfast, Dublin, and we were probably in there tour de force for small town. It was tough in those days. And the people of Drogheda went together, got a ticket for him, sent him off to the Olympic Games. Like he was only a breadman, an ordinary breadman. So you can imagine, he probably had to sell bread and get his wages out of the bread because he worked for a company. So he had to work very hard.
Tony Byrne led a boxing team packed with seasoned internationals, but the Games got off to a very bad start for the Irish.
Christy Murphy, the manager, got a serious health problem on the plane going to Australia. I think it was known, came out later as the long haul blood clot in his leg, and he went straight to hospital from the plane. I went in the ambulance with him to St. Vincent's Hospital in Melbourne, and he spent 10 weeks in hospital, missed the whole Olympic Games. I wasn't allowed in the village because I hadn't got accreditation, you know, but I done the going to the hospital to see Christy and getting them know what was happening, different things. But it was a fantastic team when you think that we had 6 boxers who came out from Ireland with no coach. And we had a lad called Pat Sharkey who was working in Australia, and he boxed for Ireland. He came down from Queensland. He worked on one of the big dam projects, construction, and he came down. So we had 7 in the Olympics.
Harry Perry, Martin Smith and Pat Sharkey all went out in the early rounds. And even though he won his first bout, it looked like John Caldwell was also going to make an early exit from the Games.
The doctor looked at Johnny and he said, "Sorry son, you're out." you're not boxing anymore in these championships. And I'll never forget Johnny's face. Tears were coming out through the closed eyelids, the eyes were closed. And I said to the doctor, because Johnny was a flyweight, he was on early, and there was still 2 hours of boxing. And I said to the doctor, would you come back in 2 hours' time and see what you think, you know? And I remember going out, taking Johnny's towel and going out to a lady. She was selling cold drinks. She had Coke bottles with ice underneath. So I gave her 50 pence for the towel full of ice. Brought her back into the dressing room, and we spent the next 2 hours putting it on Johnny's face, trying to get the swelling down, you know. Doctor came in at the end and looked, oh, see, that's a big improvement.
Caldwell was allowed to box on and went on to win a bronze medal. His exploits were matched by Freddie Gilroy and Tony Byrne. A team of just 7 boxers with their manager in hospital had won 3 bronze medals, and there was Fred Teat to come.
The welterweights. 2 new nations to the fore. Fred Teat of Ireland in the white shorts.
He was to box the Romanian Nicolae Lincea for gold.
Time and time again, the clever Irishman has Lincea moving back, but the Romanian's counterboxing is first class.
The fight would go down as one of the great injustices in Irish sport.
Under the rules, and I just have a copy here, there's a criteria. If you can't give a draw. The 2 judges that gave it a draw had to give a winner. And the first 2 things on the criteria is for most leading off and showing better style. That should have been Fred Teat.
The judge's decision went to Lincea, and he became the first Romanian ever to win a boxing gold medal. Lincea first, Teat second, Kevin Hogarth, Australia, and Nicky Cargano of Great Britain equal third.
1956 remains to this day the greatest year in Ireland's Olympic Games history. Not only did Ronnie Delaney outrun the best in the world to pick up the gold medal in the 1500 metres, but the boxers piled up an astonishing tally of 4 medals.
It was a tremendous feat to bring home so many medals from an Olympic Games. It also copper fastened the self-confidence that the boxing community had in their own talents and in their own ability to produce results, irrespective of what the lack of funding and the lack of resources that always plagued the association itself.
Despite his silver medal in Melbourne, Fred Teat will always be remembered by Irish amateur boxing fans as one half of the greatest rivalry the sport in Ireland has witnessed. After one of their battles, Perry followed Teat to his corner and said, "We'll have to give this up, Fred. We're killing each other."
England versus Ireland at the Albert Hall under ABA rules.
Tony Byrne returned from Melbourne and further enhanced his reputation in one of the most talked about fights of the era. Just after the games were over, he fought the Olympic champion, the great Dick McTaggart, on his own patch in London and beat him with some ease.
Before long, he has McTaggart on his knees, but not for the full count. Dick's tougher than that.
That was a big fight on television. Not too many televisions in Drogheda at that time, in the 50s, so we all got the black and white to see Tony Socks in the Albert Hall beating McTaggart, and that was wonderful.
Altogether, a mighty near thing, but it ends in a points victory for the battering bakery salesman from Ireland, Tony Byrne.
DVDsales.ie for the best in Irish comedy on DVD.
Thursday morning across the country, and this one is for Mr. Johnny Burns from the girls back at base.
It's so important to make someone happy. Make just one someone happy. Make just one heart-to-heart view. You sing to one smile that cheers you, one face that lights when it nears you, one girl you're everything to.
At Vodafone, we know it's the little things we all do at Christmas that make us happy. Visit us in-store or online and see all the little things we're doing to help you make someone happy this Christmas. Vodafone. Power to you.
Happy to.
Take advantage of some great trading opportunities and open yourself up to a new world of opportunities. Profit from rising and falling markets in currencies, oil, gold and stock indices with Ava FX. Multiple trading platforms to suit all levels of experience. Open an account at avafx.com today and get access to our free educational program. Practice accounts also available. Ava Capital Markets, Ava FX is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Trading carries risk and may not be suitable for all investors.
Though your world is changing,
I will be the same.
Gucci by Gucci, the fragrance.
Norman's having Santa's secret midnight sale this Thursday.
From 9:30 a.m. till midnight, even I can save, save, save.
Prices so hot, we have to keep it a secret.
There are heaps of super secret bargains store-wide, right across electrical, computers, furniture and bedding. So go ho ho! While stocks last.
Santa's secret midnight sale this Thursday only. Shh, keep the secret or you might miss out.
Give prize bonds and you're giving magic. Thousands of cash prizes are won every week and €1 million every month. Happy Christmas from Prize Bonds.
DVDsales.ie for the best in GAA on DVD.
After the Olympics, Freddie Gilroy and John Caldwell turned pro, and between them won British, Commonwealth, European and world titles. It was inevitable that the former roommates at the Melbourne Games would eventually fight each other as professionals.
Round 8.
And it turned into as bloody a spectacle as was ever witnessed in a ring.
The world was worried about the Cuban Missile Crisis and the impending Third World War, where being Belfast, of course, their own two superpowers, John Caldwell and Freddie Gilroy, were boxing at the King's Hall that October night. One hero from West Belfast, one hero from North Belfast, two men who had travelled the world and roomed together, ultimately came together in the professional boxing field for what was a grudge match.
I went up with two lads from my club, the McCormick brothers, but I was sad looking at it because they really hammered one another.
I have seen a lot of damaged boxers in this ring, but I've never seen the like of it in my life. Both boys are spattered with blood. Their faces are hardly visible behind a mask of blood.
Even prior to the fight, every night you looked at the paper, it was about the fight. You know, the two local boys, what's going to happen, how they're going to prepare for the fight. It ended up, I forgot all about papers, reading papers about the fight, and concentrated on how I was going to defend my title and win it and keep my titles. John, I felt, read the papers too much.
And still they come in for more.
Any fight, I want the mass in the morning of the fight. And I asked for guidance and for no injury to come to my opponent or myself. But when I got into the ring, I probably hurt him, he hurt me. But that is boxing.
It seems doubtful. Oh, it's doubtful if Caldwell can finish on this round. He is a mess. Even Gilroy feels ashamed to carry on.
To me, it wasn't boxing because there was a tension there, you know. And I taught myself at the time to go through the whole boxing career from schoolboy level and you end up fighting, not boxing, fighting, you know. You know, shouldn't have happened, you know.
Well, there it is, the end of the 9th round. Johnny Caldwell with a very badly cut eye. And Andy Smith, the referee, goes over to the Gilroy and has declared him the winner. So, Freddie Gilroy, Empire and British bantamweight champion, has retained his titles.
Belfast's reputation for producing world-class fighters was further enhanced with the emergence of Jim McCourt in the early 60s. McCourt fought out of the Immaculata Club in the Lower Falls district of West Belfast.
John Caldwell was in the same club as me, and he was at the 56 Olympics. I remember saying which was me, and you know, and Freddie Gilroy was there too, and Fred Tate, and I was just sort of daydreaming that I was maybe sometime would make the Olympic team. So
the Japanese demonstrated their superb efficiency and organising ability, and with the aid of television, the Games made their greatest ever impact on the world.
McCourt was selected for the 1964 Olympics in Tokyo, and by the quarter-final stage he was the last Irishman standing. He guaranteed himself a bronze at the very least by beating the Spaniard Barrera. Then it was on to the semi-final and the fight with the Russian Baranikov.
I didn't really think about the medal, actually. You know, I was more interested in fighting the Russian. Prior to me, he knocked his 4 opponents out, including Janis Katie, who was the reigning European champion. The judges' scores, and you can check it up, like, 3 judges made it 59-59. 2 judges gave it to me 60-58, and 3 59-59s had to give the decision, and they gave it to the Russian. So that's how close it was. The Russian, in turn, he got a bad decision in the final against the Pole, Joseph Grudzian. And then Ireland fought Poland about 6 months later, and I fought Grudzian and beat him handily enough. Like.
Jim McCourt was part of the Ireland team that travelled to the Mexico Olympics 4 years later, but was surprisingly beaten in his first fight.
And procedure has got in, and so Jim McCourt, who won a bronze medal in Tokyo in 1964, is out of these Olympics in his first bout.
With the team's most experienced campaigner out of the competition, Ireland's hopes of a medal rested on a young squad, including 19-year-old Martin Quinn.
I moved to Belfast, and then I joined up with the John Bosco Club in Belfast, Freddie Gilroyd's club. Watching Freddie training, and we were always trying to copy of him, and you know, he was a southpaw, I was also left-handed, so I was a southpaw. We was just watching him try to throw the same punches he was throwing, you know. After the seniors, I boxed against West Germany in Dublin, and then they picked the Olympic team that Sunday to go to Mexico. And I can remember up in my bedroom and listening to their small radio ahead, and the team was being announced, and when I heard my name over the radio, it was, oh my goodness. I came down into the wee call kitchen then, and told my mother and father I was going to the Olympic Games, you know, and you know, it was just in cloud, you know. I went out into the street and was telling my neighbours, I'm going to Mexico, I'm going to the Olympics, you know. It was a marvellous experience, you know, to get picked to box for your country, you know.
The flame bursts into life, and the signal goes round the world that this 19th celebration of the modern games is underway.
It took 11 hours flying time now, and we're going to KLM flight, I can remember well, but it was very tiring when we got there, getting to the village, and I can remember just clocking out, top of the bed, and waking up the next day, and there I was, you know, looking out the window in the village, and you know, it was a tremendous, watching all the different tracksuits in different countries, you know, walking about, and marvellous experience, you know.
Another of the Olympic debutants in 1968 was a young fighter from Kilkenny in his first major international tournament.
I had only about 2.5 years experience in boxing, but I earned that trip to the Mexico Olympics because here at this stadium I boxed Horst Rascher, who was the European champion from Germany, and I beat him. And that win, along with a few other good performances, that guaranteed me my place on the Mexico Olympic team, and that was a fantastic experience. 2 of my clubmates came with me. Brendan McCarthy, one of the best flyweights to ever grace the ring here at the stadium. Eddie Tracy at featherweight, another brilliant boxer. So Arbor Hill Club at that time, wearing black and amber, my old county's colours actually, Kilkenny. 3 of us went to the Mexico Olympic Games, and that was absolutely outstanding for a club. And it so happened we were flyweight, bantamweight and featherweight.
Dowling is only 19. He works in a Dublin hotel as a waiter. Number 178. Keep your eye on this right hand of Dowling, because it can do damage. It's a good punch.
Mick Dowling's Olympic career got off to some start by stopping the East German boxer in the first round.
What a chance here for Dowling now. Oh, and there it is again.
He eventually got through to the quarter-final, where he just missed out on a bronze medal, losing a close decision to Morioka, the Japanese boxer. Meanwhile, Marty Quinn got his tournament off to a similarly dramatic start.
So it's Martin Quinn of Ireland, the bout at lightweight. His opponent is Sambo Bernard of the Cameroons. Oh, that's two good right hands to Bernard. He's got Bernard in trouble in this first round, belting away to the body, left and right hand, and Bernard goes down in the corner in the first. He's in awful trouble.
When I beat the fella from the Cameroons, that gave me a good buzz there, and I could lift. And then when I was drawn against Grudgin from Poland, Jim McCourt knew him well because he was the gold medalist. Jim got the bronze in Tokyo that year, and Grudgin got the gold.
What a good left hand, and he's got the big champion on the floor at the very end of this bout.
It was a cracking punch, and I look at it and I say, my goodness. And with him being so groggy and falling about and that, he was hurt, you know.
There can only be seconds to go, and Grugin is in trouble from Martin Quinn of Ireland.
Even though I did put him down in the third round and messed it up by not going to the neutral corner quick enough. And I can remember Eddie Thompson telling me he counted 18 seconds wasted before the referee got taken up the count. So, you know, when he did get up, he was groggy, he was crawling about. The referee just waved it in the box.
Well, that was
as soon as I moved in, the bell went. So he was actually saved by the bell, really, you know.
Well, despite that knockdown, Grugin is the winner and goes through to the quarterfinals. But what a display by the Irishman.
I'm sorry I didn't go back and train and make my sights on Munich in '72, because I feel I could have got there, the Munich Olympics, but I was so mixed up then, because then what happened was my house was burned in '69 with the troubles in Belfast, and all my trophies were burned, and my competitors' medal and all my photographs, and you know, my mother died shortly after that, which didn't help me any, and then a brother too passed away young. Things just boxing just was, I just total lost interest in it, you know.
Marty Quinn's teammate in Mexico, Mick Dowling, did box on, and he built one of the most remarkable careers in Irish amateur boxing. A record number of national titles was capped with 2 bronze medals at European Championships. And after the fighting was over, Dowling became an integral part of the Drimna boxing story. A story that would eventually end the country's long, long wait for that elusive Olympic boxing gold.
DVDsales.ie for the best in Irish comedy on DVD.
Six all-new sports. The way they're meant to be played. With your whole body. You are the controller. Connect Sports Season 2. Only on Connect for Xbox 360.
This Christmas, we had perfect mince pies, baked right here in store. Made with the finest ingredients.
Now half price. And that's not all. We have hundreds of special offers at Superquinn this Christmas. Offers like freshly baked Sean's brown bread and smoked salmon, half price. 21-day matured topside of roast beef, half price. Clementines and melons, half price. And Chateauneuf de Pape, only €10. Superquinn, come for the quality and stay for the price.
You might think there's very little we can do to make the world's best-selling car, the Toyota Corolla, any more popular. Well, what about 3 years free servicing when you register any new Toyota by January 31st? Yes, that's 3 years free servicing on all our cars, including the Corolla. Toyota, the best built cars in the world.
The Irish Film Institute presents GAA Football Gold, a must for all GAA fans. This unique DVD includes highlights of the All-Ireland football finals of 1947 to 1959, preserved and restored by the IFI Irish Film Archive. Watch rare footage of some of the greatest Gaelic football players ever, including 9 of the GAA's Gaelic football team of the millennium. Available from all leading DVD retailers and online at ifi.ie.
Someone needs a number. Need a number nifty? Call 11850.
All life began in the ocean, which explains why seaweed is one of nature's richest sources of essential nutrients. With over 50 different minerals and vitamins. Now, with Voya's luxurious range of seaweed-based bath, health and beauty products, you can enjoy all that goodness no matter how far you are from the ocean. Voya, organic beauty from the sea.
This ad for Voya was made with the support